Hello everybody, Andy here from Glass Off Dead, the #1 Kill Team channel on YouTube, unless you are aware of literally any other Kill Team channel on YouTube. So, hello, today I'm talking about just how broken is Kill Team now, but I'm not. That was the alternative title. I've probably titled it something a little bit more, just how balanced is Kill Team now, because that identical video, identical discussion, but let's not clickbait too much, right? This is not going to be a discussion on power creep and anything like that. Really, this is just a little bit of a breakdown about the casual player and how they might be experiencing the game right now and why certain teams are in certain tiers, and how we could expect the game to evolve going forwards. Because in case you don't know, the way all of these games balance themselves out is, yes, there will normally be a very overrepresented in tournament number, but it's in a constant circle, it's a constant cycle, a spiral potentially, let's hope not a spiral, of meta shifting. As Kill Team is a game of rock, paper, scissors, which isn't so much rock, paper, scissors. There are very few truly hard counters in the game, although there are some. This is more about damage thresholds and wound thresholds, which we don't need to talk about the specifics of, but if you know, you know, so it's all good. And so we're going to be looking at, obviously, go check out the person that actually does the stats, which is Pretentious Plastic Ops. You should check them out. I'm using their stats to put these into tiers. I have not used their tiers. I've put my own tiers up because I think that's a little bit easier. It makes a bit more sense. But if you want to just see the raw numbers, go check out Pretentious Plastic Ops. Always good to have more stats people in the game. Right, of course, before we get into the actual numbers, which is here, by the way, and I'll be explaining, hey, why are these so high up in the stat numbers and why are these so low down and all this stuff. For example, a really good example of this is Scouts being in the sub 40%. I think they're like 36% win rate. Why are they there? Because they're not that bad. So what has put them on the bottom of the tier list and such a low win rate? I think that'll be a fun little discussion. Of course, before we get into that, I would like to give a affiliate link only benefit, and that affiliate link only benefit is a big old double hello. Wow, so wholesome. Truly the wholesomest knows no bounds. And if you want a double hello in the next video, do consider clicking some of my affiliate links. It's Element Games, Whaling Games, Red October Games in the UK, Northern Citadel in Canada, Wargame Portal in America, and then that double pleasantry can be yours as well. And if you're a Kill Team player, do consider checking out my, I've recently done a video about Crossfire all-in-one, and how they can help you transfer all your minis to your local tournaments, or just local game store. And I'll be doing a GG Easy one soon. But either way, I use both of these. They're both great systems. Pick whichever one you think is best for you. You can't go wrong. Whatever you think is coolest. Okay, let's have a quick breakdown of what exactly a tier list is and what the tiers mean, etc., etc. And then we'll try and crack through as many. If I don't know the team, I'm not going to talk about it. There's no point me waffling. But I think that most teams can be described by the current TAC-op situation. So basically, S tier is they have a 55% win rate plus. A and B are the 55 to 45% win rate. A and B is where GW states they want all of their teams to be. That is the win rate. That is the Goldilocks zone. Okay, that is the golden Goldilocks zone is what I meant to say. So I said it correctly. Well done me. You know, we've had Walcom articles in the past where GW has specifically said we aim for all of our teams to be within the 55 to 45% win rate. Anything outside of those, we probably will balance. Cool. That's good to know. We then get the 45 to 40% win rate, which is things that we know are out of that Goldilocks zone, but maybe there's reason for, and it's just waiting for their time to come back around. And then we get the D tier, which here is absolutely terrible. How are they that low? We also have all of the unclassified teams. They're just on there. I have actually put them in their win rate order. So I think like Wormblade have an outrageously high win rate percentage. That's most likely because very recently, the ex-world champion, Dan Barton, recently ran them at a few tournaments and like won those tournaments. So they are absolutely smashing it. But that was before the unclassified system came into effect. So all of the top players have probably moved off of these old teams now. And so we would expect all of their win rates to drop. Cool. Right. Let's start at the top. No. Do we start at the top? Yes. I think the top defines everything else, to be honest with you. So if we define the S tier and why those teams are there and why they will probably get nerfed, it kind of explains everything else. So, oh, we'd also need to point out there are not many games. Okay, if you look at 40K data, you'll probably be seeing tens of thousands of games, right? When you're looking at Kill Team, you're seeing 1,000 games. Now, 1,000 is still a lovely number. You know, I'm not no critique on that on the number size. That's the game we have. However, you've got to understand that some of these teams are also very new and have been played officially like 5 times. Okay? So keep that in mind as well. For sure, like I think the Battle Clade at the bottom there, over 4 months or something, they've had 30 games. Okay? And then that's worth the discussion of why is nobody playing them? Because there is a reason, I'm sure. But don't think that just because they actually have a 30% win rate means that their actual power is 30%. We have very small data sets, doubly so at the moment because we've just had Worlds, we've just had the classified system go out. There's been a lot of change, etc., etc. And we've just obviously had 2 new teams with the Space Wolves and the Tau Stealth Suits dropping, who seem to be good, but how good are they? Okay. With that said, let's look at the S tier teams. These are the teams that require the most thinking because they will define everything else. Let's start with the Wolf Scouts at the top. Again, very small data set. So I don't know if they will actually stay at the top there. They might not actually be the strongest team in the game. But for now, they are an incredibly strong team. The reason they are an incredibly strong team is because they have such flexible tac ops and are just incredibly strong on their data sheets. What I mean by that is they are, in a sense, kind of a 5.5 model team, but that half model is still really good. Uh, and they can kind of use that half model, the wolf, I mean, as a tech piece. Being able to charge and strategic gambit is, in essence, their version of a Vox Scream almost. And they also have access to Recon. Now, if you don't know Recon, the attack op, they have, I think they're Seek and Destroy and Recon. Recon allows a team to play very passively. When you're thinking about the traditional way to run Marines, you probably have to be quite aggressive because you don't have the activations to be able to passively wait out, see what your opponent will do, and then react in those final, 5 activations you get after the Death Watch have moved. So instead, you have to make your game plan very clear right at the start. Except these guys don't have to do that because they have access to Recon. So this just means that the team is incredibly flexible and they can really change their playstyle based on the enemies that they are fighting against. They are able to be very, very defensive, very durable, always having access to rerolls. They are never out of the storm. They don't need to be. They always get rerolls in defense. They always get rerolls in melee. And they are an entire team of lethal 5 power weapons. I'm not going to go in too hard on the Wolf Scouts. That is a separate video. I genuinely believe that Wolf Scouts are the biggest mistake Kill Team has made this edition when it comes to power levels. For an average gamer like myself, I'm sure the top tiers are like, no, Wolf Scouts are fine. They're strong, of course, but there's ways around them. But for the average man on the Joe on the streets, I think they're a ridiculous team, and I genuinely wonder, what they were thinking when they were both designed and play tested. Absolutely insane. However, one of their skills, apart from just being incredibly strong and durable on their data sheets, actively nerfing every team they play against incredibly harshly, is they have the ability to change how they play. So the opponent will not know how you're going to play. You can play aggressive or you can play passive. And that almost, in a sense, gives you a free turn of scoring because the opponent cannot know what you're going to do into them, which is not true for a lot of teams. So the team is allowed to be very conservative and just max tac op and crit op turn 2, and you haven't touched them. And then they can flip to being much more aggressive after you've kind of put made it very clear how you're going to play, or they can just go aggressive right from turn 1. And as the opponent, you don't know how to deal with that because you don't know how the individual plays, playstyle, etc. Cool. Very strong team, very flexible playstyle, incredibly defensive. Right, we then have a look at the Canoptek Circle. So obviously the Canoptek Circle have been around for coming up 4 months now. We all know they are a very strong team. One of their big issues is they have really good shooting. They also have really good um, messing with elites. Basically, they're elite killers, which is very nice for them, obviously. And one of their biggest things is that basically their two big guys will kill a marine every shot. And if you give them the shot, they get the kill. But if you don't give them the shot, they're going to win. So what do? You'd obviously like to try and hold them up in so they can't shoot, but they can just fall back and shoot you because they're B3 APL, and then you've lost a marine. Yeah, they're a little bit overkilly, it would appear, with no way to lock them down. And then when you do kill them, they're always on the nodes, the matrix, so they will just revive and they can still just shoot you again. As I'm okay, great. Um, a very challenging team for elite teams to beat. I don't know as much how horde teams play into them. Um, I know that Wrecker Crew actually have a pretty good match into them. I will say that. So it's not just they beat all elites, but they do, one would assume, beat most Marine players. And when 50% of the field, I think it's actually 60% of the field is Marines, you just naturally are going to be a very strong team. They also have access to recon, which means you can play their recon and I want to say infiltration. I think no, they're of course they're security. So those are the two best tac ops. So you can play any way you want with this team, similar to the Wolf Scouts. There, you don't know how they're going to play. You don't know if they're going to be aggressive. They can also be passive and just make you come to them, which means that the issue with Canoptic Circle is having to know how to use your node matrix. But you fix that in your game plan. You know what you're going to do. And then you move to a position and you stay there. You don't move. Your game plan is focused around having a medic and two big guys sat on a node, done on a matrix. And then that is you winning in essence. Pick a point on the map, put your nodes there, put two big guys and a medic there, you win the game. Is kind of their play style. There you go. Have a think about that. But again, you get to decide where that point on the map is. Is it going to be far forwards? Is it going to be on the center line? Is it going to be back in your place? They can do anything they want because of their tac op selection and their ability to kill Marines with relative ease compared to how other teams have to look at Marines. So very strong because of their kill ability, flexible tac ops. They then have Mandrakes. So Mandrakes have a pretty decent match into most Marine teams. They are able to get around their armor, so just lots of shooting all over the place. You can quite easily take down Marines using your melee as a finisher. Again, this is an infiltration team, which is now relatively easy for these guys to score. So you can kind of guarantee easy tac ops thanks to your movement. So yeah, this is a strong team, really good scoring, very tricksy as well. If you're a newer player or a more casual player, playing against this team is so difficult to play into because they just don't do anything you expect. No other kill team works quite like them, and they can ignore terrain, they teleport anywhere they want on the map, blah blah blah. Yeah, there you go. We get the Felgors. Now the Felgors are kind of the first team there that goes to a full 10 models instead of just the sixes, the sevens, the eights, the nines, and they have the ability to not die. I don't know if more need be said. Frenzy is still a really good, strong rule. There you go. Felgor fell out of favor for a while, but then obviously kind of people re-looked at the team, at the current meta, and decided that actually I don't think Deathwatch and Canoptic can fully handle their Frenzy rule. So, and along with the new approved ops, new tac ops, I am going to be able to win with them. And sure enough, people have. I don't think that Felgor were ever a bad team. I think people had just moved on from them because they released Incredibly Broken and were quickly nerfed to a point where people were like, okay, I'm going to move on. And now they seem to have swung back around, which is really good to see. I do enjoy it when a team hasn't been nerfed and then just has a sudden resurgence or hasn't been buffed, sorry, and just gets a sudden resurgence in popularity as people realize, oh, this team now plays well into the current meta. It's always interesting to see. We then also get the Brood Brothers at the bottom, the end of S tier, so still absolutely rocking it with a 55 plus win rate. Again, this is a really interesting team. They were dominating for a while because they had access to Alpha Strike ability. Oh, sorry, Wolf Scouts have an Alpha Strike as well. That is an Wolf Strike. Sorry, Wolf Scouts go against every current game design philosophy that Kill Team is trying to has changed the entire edition to remove. Wolf Scouts have everything. I'm not going to talk about them again in this video, but they should not be in the game. Okay, so the Broodlords had access, and the Brood Brothers had access to an Alpha Strike. When we still had a few Alpha Strikes left over from the last edition, that was removed, and then their Magus was heavily nerfed, minorly nerfed. And that meant all of the top players jumped off the Brood Brothers. Cool. So they haven't received any buffs. There's been no advantages to them since they got knocked off. Like, the approved ops aren't any better or worse for them than they previously were, compared to what everybody else is dealing with as well. And now suddenly, out of nowhere, this quarter, they are back to a 55 plus win rate. How is this possible? Again, it's just people accepting that the nerfs that were received are not as bad as originally thought. Brood Brothers are still a really good team. They're a fun team. If you haven't played Brood Brothers, I think they're actually one of the more fun horde shooty teams to play with, because you do get access to the cool model. I always enjoy that in my teams. Very thematic. When you have normal plebs plus a big dude, I don't know, just that kind of internal power difference and scaling is really cool. Unfortunately, you are still not running the Patriarch. That is still not the play. You are still running the Magus. The Magus, which was the guy that was nerfed, to be clear. So, again, nothing has changed for this team since it was nerfed. People have just come back around to it in the current meta, which is cool to see. I always enjoy seeing community groupthink being wrong, basically. We can talk about high tech at the bottom, don't worry. Cool. And that's your S tier. And one of the key things for all of these teams is going to be their flexibility and how they play into Space Marines and elites in general. Now, why does that matter so much? The reason the S tier are all about flexibility and how they play into Marines, forget other elites, just how they play into Marines, is purely because when you just look at how many people play a certain faction, Marines are always heavily overrepresented, always. Now, I'm going to be honest, I think that's a good thing. Let's ignore that though. In general, I did the numbers in a previous video, but I think it was something like Marines make up 15% of the factions. This was when Unclassified was still in place. But are played by 67%, something like that. Like, that's the ridiculous number disparity of all players in the tournament. So there you go. So there are there were 6 Marine teams out of 44 teams, and they made up 60% of all players. Something ridiculous like that, you know. Cool. And of course, that means that if you're going to a tournament, keep in mind a win rate just means that, you know, you've won 3 games out of your 4, or you've, you know, 2 wins and a draw, whatever. 2 wins and a loss even. That's 55% for you there. Brilliant. That's 66, in fact. Cool. If you go to enough of those and you know how to beat Marines, thumbs up. You're going to do just fine. Yeah. And they're flexible, again, as already discussed. If a team can be unpredictable in their turn 2, how they're going to score, that is very strong for them. It means that you will have either you could potentially have positioned incorrectly if you do not know the tac ops they're going to play, because you may have positioned too aggressively, so they are then able to capitalize on how far up the board you are, or you will have not positioned aggressively enough, assuming that the enemy is going to move forwards into your pincer movement, when they're not going to. They don't need to push up the board, and then you're out of position. So they basically get a free turn of scoring. All of those S tier teams, which makes a lot of sense. That's just how the new tac ops are. There you go. Cool. Which, in fairness, is good, to be clear, because it's really boring when you know exactly which tac op your opponent's going to pick, because there's one good one in all of their archetypes, which is a little bit how the last edition, the last season was. The tac ops were very well defined, whereas now I do think that in certainly recon and security, there are valid, maybe, yeah. In recon and security, there are valid tac ops for multiple teams. Some teams are going to have to kind of stick to one, and they definitely can't do the other in certain archetypes. But like that's fine. So again, those S tier teams all have the capability to run multiples of those easy to score tac ops, whereas other teams have to be a bit more selective, so you can figure out what they're going to be running, and then they don't have the ability to really back it up. Cool. We then go to the A and the B tier teams. Now, obviously, I'm talking about these two teams in terms of being the same tier, and that's because when you're looking at as an average guy on the street, who obviously is bizarrely into Kill Team, why I don't know. Um, everything here kind of doesn't matter. Everything here is where it should be, and just because we see Blades of Cain at the bottom, I think they are like 55.01% win rate. That isn't really where they are. So, as discussed, very small win rate data, and Blades of Cain were, for a time, so they started the edition, everybody said they sucked. Then people realized, I think about 4 months into the edition, how to win with them. They've then had an amazing win rate. They've been like second best, only being beaten by Warp, Covenant, Sanctifiers for 6 months. And they haven't received a nerf, really. They took a minor nerf, but not anything that affected the team. And now, people have just moved on. They've played them for a year. They've done what they wanted to do at their local scenes. They've dominated with them. It's a really interesting team, and they've just moved on. There you go. So I really do not think that we need to look at the A and the B tier team and truly make a distinction between the actual power level of I was going to call them Striking Scorpions because that's the picture of the Blades of Cain compared to Deathwatch. I think everything in the A and B tier team, or the A's and the B tiers, could be anywhere in those two tiers. So anyway, with that said, let's just look at the obvious thing again, because this is an average player's, a beginner player's, if you will, guide to what's up with kill team power levels. Hey, look at all of the elites being in this zone, right? That's because elites are the most played teams. There you go. It's kind of what you'd expect. Elites are very strong, but because they are played by the most number of players, it means you get everything from the top to the bottom, and so you average everything out. Because they have a higher number of reps played in every team, they're going to be tending towards the middle. People love Marines. There you go. Even the Space Wolf Scouts. I'll call it now. Even the Space Wolf Scouts, despite how easy they are to play and how strong they are and flexible they are, even they, I do not believe, from a pure win rate perspective, will actually remain at the top of the game. I think that Canoptek Circle are a far less popular team, a far harder to play team, and just significantly more niche. And therefore, the type of people that will be attracted to that team will be, from a hobby perspective, more niche, from a gameplay perspective, more niche. But then that means that the number of top level players that want to play Canoptek, because they will then be a larger percentage of the number of people that want to play that team overall, they will maintain a very high win rate. Whereas Space Wolf Scouts, everybody wants to play them. As much as I think they're total BS from a mechanics perspective, they're still just a really cool team. Like, they're a really cool team. Let's be clear. If you ignore how overpowered they are, they're a really cool team. Awesome. And a lot of people are just going to play them because they're Space Wolves and they're Marines. And, oh, well, actually, I don't like Space Wolves, but I love red or yellow Marines, so I'm going to paint them that color instead. Awesome. Love it. More elite teams, the better. Genuinely. The more Marines, the better. It's what attracts people to the game. I want more players in the game. Space Wolf Scouts are a brilliant team. And you know what? You play Space Wolf Scouts as your first team, you're going to really struggle playing any other team in the game. They're not going to teach you how to be a good player because they're too good. But that's not the point. So there you go. Having all of the elites there makes a lot of sense. If I can quickly draw out a few of my own interesting interpretations, I do think that coming into this new meta of Space Wolf Scouts, yes, that will be the meta for the next 4 months. How strong Space Wolf Scouts are. If you want to win a tournament, you have to now for the past 3 months, going into a tournament, you had two thoughts on your mind, and only 2 thoughts. Your thoughts were, "Can my team beat Deathwatch? And can my team beat Canoptech Circle?" The reason for this is that Deathwatch are a strong team. Let's be clear on that. They're not the strongest, but they are a strong team, and they're an easy to play team, which and they're Marines, which means everyone's gonna play them, okay? And even bad players will play them relatively well because they're a high high skill floor team. So just playing them will elevate how good you are as a player, right? Obviously, you're not going to be anywhere near the ceiling, but just because the skill floor for them is high, they're elevating your play. And there's so many of them that if you cannot beat Deathwatch, you might as well not take them to the team, to the game. Hello, Battleclade at the bottom there. Maybe that's something to consider there. Hello, Scouts. Maybe that's something to consider there. So anyway, fine. So we then have all the other. Oh, and Canoptech Circle. Originally, when Dead Silence, no, that's the last one, Tomb World released, everybody was scared of Deathwatch. It quickly became, and everybody's saying they need to be nerfed. How do we deal with them? Blah, blah, blah. Then we had Canoptech Circle come out and it was like, oh no, they're the actual scary team. They're the one that has the crazy high win rate percentage, etc., etc. We've already discussed why. Um, by the same logic, it's entirely possible that the actual win rate percentage of Deathwatch should be ignored. And truly, Deathwatch are in the S tier. Uh, but the reason they're not is because so many new players and just people that are casuals to the game, uh, maybe if you have 10 top tier players, tournament grinders playing Deathwatch and 10 of them also playing Canoptech Circle, well, the percentage of people playing Canoptech Circle, casuals to tournament pros might be 50-50. But then, if the same number of players that are going to do Deathwatch might be, 90-10, right? Like very easily. And so then, therefore, the win rate will just be significantly drawn down by the casual players. Not that that's a bad thing at all, to be clear. I'm just trying to explain why they might be in the A tier instead of the S tier when really they're in the S tier. They are a very strong team, to be clear. Cool. Moving forward, so I am facing this exact question myself. I'm going to a tournament on Saturday, and I've got 2 people already signed up in that tournament as Space Wolf Scouts. So the question I am asking is not who's going to play Deathwatch and who's going to play Canoptech. Or how do I beat them? It's how do I beat Space Wolf Scouts? Not so much how do I beat Stealth Suits. Stealth Suits are a very interesting team. They're almost in the same way as Tomb World. The question was, the initial thought is, how do I beat Deathwatch? And then it became, how do I beat Canoptech? We have very similar teams where everyone is now reacting, how do I beat Space Wolf Scouts? Not many people are asking, how do I beat Stealth Suits? They are asking it from a mechanical perspective because the Stealth Suits, do have a very interesting playstyle that you do need to know how to beat, but they're not very strong. And I think that unlike with Tomb World, I don't think that question is going to flip. I don't think we're going to be seeing Stealth Suits as being like a big issue. Tau are incredibly popular, so we will see Stealth Suits on the board a lot. But if you're Marines, you can beat them. I don't think they're a very powerful team. Once they get buffs, that might change, of course. Anyway, everything else in A and B makes total sense. And anything we're seeing in C and D, the real reason they are there is because they don't have a true answer from Space Marines. And that's really all it is. I do think, Kill Team is very much a game of 2 halves. There's Space Marines, there's Elite, and then there's everything else. And top pro tournament players are able to make the everything else work, and they're able to see, okay, people are taking Space Wolf Scouts now instead of Deathwatch, or they're taking AOD instead of Deathwatch or Raveners, blah, blah, blah. And I know that of my list of the other 30 teams in the game, I think I'm better using this team now, and I know how to play them just as well as I know how to play the other teams I play, because they're tournament grinders, they're very good players, etc. I don't do that. I genuinely think the game is better when your teams are matched. Just straight up, I think the game is better if you're playing elites on elites, or horde on horde, or mid on mid. And I really don't. I think the game falls apart when you start to blur those lines a bit. I don't think it holds up. However, with that said, when we're looking at the overall tournament meta, because these are tournament stats, of course, we do need to keep in mind that these C's and D's are held back not because they are inherently bad teams, but because every game they play into bloody elites, and they just don't have the source there. But if you buff them, they will absolutely wipe the floor with other teams. For example, Space Marine Scouts. Scouts, D tier. I think that, yeah, terrible win rate. But they're not a bad team. They can wipe the floor with many mid-range teams. They're a 9 model team. Everybody's got 4 up saves, 10 wounds, and you know what? You've got your you are incredibly strong into other mid teams. Really, really good for the vast majority. So if you put them into whatever, who's up to the top? Um, Honestly, I would give them the win over Inquisition, over Aquilons, over maybe not Sanctifiers. I don't know how their damage reduction works these days. Probably over Wreckers, I reckon. Um, yeah, Crute for sure. Exaction, yeah. Rattlings, yes. Yeah. I think they even win into Blades of Cain, but they can't chew through Space Marine armor reliably enough to get the win. And that's their real issue. They are not in any way a bad team. And so when it comes to another round of buffs for them, the question is not how do we buff this team or for everybody. Or sorry, the question they will ask themselves isn't, is the team too weak? The question will be, can the team beat Marines? Unfortunately, this isn't a great way to balance the game because it then means that you get teams that are too good into certain other teams and you just kind of grow the rock, paper, scissors of wound threshold counts. That is Kill Team at the moment. But that's fine. Like that's just what the game is. That's not that's not a negative. There aren't many hard counters left in the game, which is very good. They have removed most of those. Unfortunately, they keep putting them back in every time they release a new team, but that's fine. They are getting rid of them. That's good. So when you're looking at Battleclade, I just played Battleclade the other day. I was actually thinking of taking them to this tournament, but then I realized actually Battleclade have a really good matchup into a lot of teams similar to Scouts, into mids, maybe not hordes, but mids. But man, you struggle. You struggle into Marines. They're great at killing Raveners, to be clear. But Marines just, yeah, it's a bit of a struggle into them. And of course, they can beat a bad Marine player, but I would say that they cannot beat a good Marine player, even if you're a good Battleclade player, if that makes sense. And again, the reason for this is that it's a very limited team in the way that it operates, unfortunately, because the one thing that you do is a little bit reliant because you're also slow. You can't change to how the enemy has decided to play. I was going to play Battleclade, but then I realized I literally couldn't beat Wolf Scouts. There was no point taking them, basically. Or like if I got that matchup, I'd probably just, you know, I should just concede and say, all right, well, let's go grab a Coke or something. Go do a line, something like that. And that's it. There you go. This is a brief, rough explanation of Kill Team and Balance. And this has mainly been for the new players out there to hopefully have a little bit of an idea of where everything is and why it is there. And hopefully to ease some people after seeing very scary stats numbers that just because Scouts are down at like 36% win rate doesn't mean that's where they are. It just means that they lose every game into Marines, and Marines are the most played faction. But if they get a match into anything else, they're loving life. It's an easy breezy game. So how do you buff them? Because what they need to do is kill Marines. Yeah, it's a bit of a pickle for them. It's a bit of a pickle. And then buff them without buffing them into mids because their mids literally won't be able to touch them at all, you know? So it's definitely all very roundabout, rock, paper, scissors, except the rock, paper, scissors are the damage thresholds for each team. Um, All in all, I will say at the end here, aside from the 2 new teams, ignore them, and aside from Canoptech and probably Deathwatch, I'll throw them I think Deathwatch are fine. They need a very minor tweak, but aside from those 4 newest teams, I think the game's in a pretty solid place. But you just have to accept what the game is, and accept that the game is rock, paper, scissors these days. It is, but without hard counters, to be clear. Very few actual hard counters, but just, yeah, you will have good and bad matchups. There are a lot of good and bad matchups in the game. Let's just say that. And in general, your main question going into any tournament is, can I beat Marines? That is your actual question. Forget the specific Marines, just 14 wounds, 6 models, 3 up saves. Can you deal with that profile, knowing they're going to charge you? How do you deal with that? If you cannot deal with that, you cannot win a tournament. You might win a game. You might win 2 games, but you're not going 3-3. I say 3-3, it should be 4-4, but Kill Team tends to be a very casual, relaxed crowd, and we rarely do 4-round game days. So there you go. Anyway, you made it to the end of the video. Not that one, sorry. I'd like to give you a big triple hello. Wow, so wholesome. Truly the hottest nose about in the world, of course, half dead. And that pleasantry is just for you, my good sir, Sir S, or Sir I. If you're in the UK, do consider checking out Enemy Games, Winning Games with October Games, or the Northern Citadel in Canada, and Wargame Portal in America. And check out the Crossfire All-in-One system or the GG Easy All-in-One system. I will specifically highlight from the Crossfire system the Token Caddy. You've got to have it, genuinely. And the GG Easy, you've got to have a Token Caddy. Seriously, it speeds up your game so much. And for the GG Easy, you see these little sticks. I'm a stick guy. I take my sticks to every game. It's how I measure everything now. You got to have the measurement sticks. Trust me, I helped him design them, so that's probably why I like them. But it's more just a case of I know what I like and how I like to play. The sticks are the way. Go get yourself those sticks, trust me. Every time I play, people want to borrow my sticks. People love my sticks. Goodbye. I pressed the wrong button. Goodbye.